Hello, this video is about conditionals in English. This is part 1 of 2, which will cover real conditionals. Part 2 will cover unreal conditionals and wishes. So let's start with some review of the basics. Most sentences in English follow a subject-verb-object pattern, where S stands for the subject, V stands for the verb, and O stands for the object. So the subject is just who or what the sentence is about. The verb is what the subject does or is. And the object is a person or thing that is affected by the action of a verb. Subjects and objects are usually nouns, pronouns, and gerunds. Let's also review what is a clause. A clause is a group of 2 or more words. A clause has both a subject and a verb. Think about these following examples. What is the subject and verb in each clause? My teacher loves grammar. If you said that teacher was the subject and loves was the verb, you are correct. Let's look at another example. The dog is sleeping. What is the subject and what is the verb? Dog is the subject and is sleeping is the complete verb. And one more example. We make pancakes every Sunday. What's the subject? What's the verb? We is the subject and make is the verb. An independent clause has one subject and verb pair. It is a complete thought, meaning the idea in the clause is finished. You don't need any more information. And it can stand alone as a sentence. One independent clause is also known as a simple sentence. Remember the examples from the previous slide? My teacher loves grammar. The dog is sleeping. We make pancakes every Sunday. Well, guess what? They are all independent clauses, which means they are also all simple sentences. A dependent clause, on the other hand, is a little bit different. Like an independent clause, it also has one subject and verb pair. All clauses must have a subject and a verb pair. However, it's not a complete thought, and it cannot stand alone as a sentence. A dependent clause can't be a simple sentence. In order to make it a complete sentence, you must connect it to another independent clause, and this is what we call a complex sentence. Remember these examples. My teacher loves grammar. The dog is sleeping. We make pancakes every Sunday. Well, if I add a subordinating conjunction, or also sometimes known as an adverb clause marker, they become dependent clauses. Because my teacher loves grammar, what happens? If the dog is sleeping, yes, what happens if it's sleeping? After we make pancakes every Sunday, what do? What happens? They're all dependent clauses now, and they're all unfinished thoughts. So conditionals are a type of independent and dependent clause. They're a type of complex sentence. Conditionals are used to express a feeling of speculation, imagining what will or what would happen in a particular situation. The grammar of conditionals is not the same as other structures in English. Verb tense changes depend on what kind of conditional you are using and whether you're talking about the present, the past, or the future. There are 4 types of conditionals in English. The first is the real conditional for the present, also sometimes called the zero conditional. The second type of conditional is the real conditional for the future, also sometimes known as the first conditional. The third type of conditional is the unreal conditional for the present or future, also sometimes known as the second conditional. And finally, unreal conditional for the past, which is also sometimes known as the third conditional. So let's first talk about the real conditional for the present, or the zero conditional. These are conditions of fact, meaning they are always true. Real conditionals use the simple present tense in both the conditional clause and the independent clause. Let's look at this example. Water freezes. It turns to ice. So I have a subject here, water, and a verb, freezes. So it's a clause because it has a subject and a verb. And it's an independent clause because that's a finished thought. I don't need more information to complete that idea. Over here, also it and turns, another subject and verb. And it turns to ice, that's a finished thought. That's another independent clause. If I combine these two sentences together using the conditional connector if, I get a complex sentence. So if water freezes, it turns to ice. Notice I want to use a comma in the middle. Remember, if you have a complex sentence that uses adverb clause markers or subordinating conjunctions, you want to use a comma in the middle if that subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning. If the subordinating conjunction is in the middle, no comma. So this is a complex sentence. This is my dependent clause, also known as my conditional clause. And then this is my independent clause, also known as my result clause. Notice, in both clauses, I use simple present tense. Freezes in my conditional clause and turns in my result clause. So this is a fact, right? Every time water freezes, it turns to ice. This is always true, so I'm going to use simple present tense to express that this is a real conditional for the present. Sometimes other structures are used besides the if clause. If is the most common connector that we use with conditionals, but there are some other connectors that you can use as well. The team practices every day unless it rains. Unless is a connector that means except if, meaning in every other situation, we practice as a team, except if it rains. Look at these two examples. If I have a day off from work, I go to the beach. Or when I have a day off, I go to the beach. So here I use if and when. Take a minute. What do you think is the difference in using the connecting word if or the connecting word when? So the answer is using when instead of if makes the condition sound more regular or more routine. If I have a day off from work, I go to the beach, means I don't often have a day off. But the second example, when I have a day off from work, I go to the beach, makes it sound like I regularly have a day off. So take a moment, pause the video, and complete this practice exercise. Okay, great job. Did you complete the practice? Let's go over the answers together. So, number 1, if I stay home from work, I usually watch shows on Netflix. Simple present tense. Number 2, our study group meets every week unless the school is closed. Number 3, if it rains, simple present tense again. We're practicing the zero conditional here. I always bring an umbrella. Number 4, when he goes to the cafe, he buys a coffee and a pastry. Number 5, in my family, when it is your birthday, everyone is nice to you. And number 6, if students miss class, they need to email the professor. All right, great job, you guys. Now let's talk about the real conditional for the future, also known as the first conditional. Future real conditionals make a prediction about the future or express possibilities. We use the simple present tense in the conditional clause. The result clause can use a variety of forms, but they all express the future. The most common one is will, but you can also use other modal verbs that express the future, such as can, should, might. Or we can use the other form to express the future, be going to. All of these forms are followed by the base form or the simple form of the verb. Let's look at these examples. If I pass the final, I will be happy. This is my conditional clause or my dependent clause. Here's my result clause or my independent clause. Another example, the game will be played unless it rains. So here I'm using the connecting word unless, also a conditional connector. This is my conditional clause or my dependent clause. And here is my result clause or my independent clause. Notice in the conditional clause, I have used simple present tense. So I'm making a guess about what's going to happen in the future, using simple present tense in both of my conditional clauses. In the result clause, I've used a form of the future tense to express that future possibility. All right, pause the video and do this practice, this time with the first conditional. All right, hopefully you've completed the practice now. Great job. Let's check answers together. If I stay home from work tomorrow, I will watch shows on Netflix. So I need simple present tense here in my conditional clause. Our study group will meet next week unless the school is closed. So this time it's the result clause and I need future tense. If you used something else like might meet or is going to meet, that's okay too. Number 3, I will cancel the party if the snow continues. This is my conditional clause, so I want to use the simple present tense here. Number 4, unless you eat breakfast now, you will be hungry later. Again, if you had another form of the future tense, that's okay too. But this is the result clause, so it needs to use some form of future. Number 5, if I leave work on time, I'll go to the gym. So I need the simple present tense here in my conditional clause. And number 6, if I miss class on Monday, I will contact my professor. So I need future tense here in the result clause for number 6. All right, let's try a little bit more practice. This time, decide if the sentence is a zero conditional or if it's a first conditional. Hint, pay attention to the result clause. Go ahead and pause the video and try the practice yourself. All right, welcome back. Let's check answers together. Number 1, if I drink coffee at night, I have trouble sleeping. If you said zero conditional, you are correct. I have simple present tense in both the conditional and the result clause. This is a condition of fact. Number 2, milk lasts longer if you keep it in the refrigerator. That's right, also a zero conditional. So here I've got simple present tense, lasts, and keep. So this is a condition of fact. Number 3, if I go to the party, I will bring a dessert. If you said first conditional for this one, you are correct. I've got I will bring, future tense, so that tells me that this is a condition expressing future possibilities. That's the first conditional. Number 4, if I am late for work, my boss will be angry. Also a first conditional. I've got that future tense will be in the result clause. Number 5, if I eat too much, I get an upset stomach. That is the zero conditional. And then finally, number 6, we will celebrate if our team wins the game. That is the first conditional. We will celebrate. All right, that's the end of part 1. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns, please send me an email or post to the discussion board. And if you'd like to learn about unreal conditionals and wishes, please tune in to part 2.